All right. Well, good evening. This is kind of an interesting one. Uh, Kind of a different all in. I've got a good friend of mine, Jim Weinstein, former retired colonel, U.S. Air Force. He's also a nutritionist, raced for the U.S. cycling team, U.S. military cycling team. Had a very, good junior career. Is that fair to say, Jim?
I think my best year ever was in 2012 when I was an old Masters rider, but who's to say? I definitely have a long history with as a cyclist and a coach, and but maybe never achieved my potential because I was busy, doing work and other things. So yeah.
And of course, I have Brian with us today. So I know it's been a couple days since we've been on our show, but I think this kind of a fun one. Are you interested in this one, Brian?
Oh yeah, no, this is a fascinating one. This is so far 180 degrees removed from what I do, as to be, just absolutely fascinating. So gonna pick your brain a lot here, Jim.
Yeah,
All
let's do
right.
it.
So without further ado, I've not told you what Jim's getting ready to do. Jim is getting ready to basically walk from the southern part of the United States all the way to the northern part of the United States on the Appalachian Trail. How many miles is that, Jim?
Yeah, about 2,200 miles, plus or minus. Unfortunately, Hurricane Helene did a little damage to the trail in North Carolina and Tennessee, Virginia area. So the actual distance might be a little off of that, but about 2,200 miles.
That's what I put in on the bike last year.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna walk every step of it.
All right. So that brings the first question. Why the Appalachian Trail?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I am getting ready to hike the Appalachian Trail. It's a trail that goes from Georgia to Maine and crosses 14 states in between and covers about 515,000 feet of elevation, which is like climbing Everest a dozen or more times. And I have always been interested in just sort of challenging my body and my mind to do things that are just really hard to do. I've always been interested in the Appalachian Trail. Even as a kid, we grew up very close to it in northwestern New Jersey, and I had this opportunity. Some folks go through a midlife crisis. I just had this opportunity where my military career, all I've ever known, is working for the military. I've done it for almost 30 years, and I retired. And retired in July, and I just realized that it wasn't a chapter of my life that was closing, and I'd be opening a new chapter. It was a book that was closing, and I was going to have an opportunity to open a whole new book. But before I got that book off the shelf, I had this space in between, and I was like, "What do I want to accomplish in that space?" I want to grow a beard. I want to let my hair grow. And I was like, "Holy cow, this might be enough time for me to hike the Appalachian Trail." Did a little research on it, and sure enough, I've got enough time before I need to go back to work, that I'm gonna tackle this thing, and it's not an uncommon thing. There's about I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000 people that attempt to hike the Appalachian Trail, the whole thing, every year, and it's a tough endeavor. I don't know that there's great statistics on it, but I think almost 2/3 of the people that set out to do it aren't successful at completing the whole trail. I don't want to say they're not successful. Everybody's got their own finish line, but it's definitely a tough endeavor, both mentally, physically. To hike that far and do it in a single season. So to be called a through hiker, you gotta hike the whole trail in one year, and that too can be tough because there's weather and snow in the north and weather and snow in the south, and you're trying to find the sweet spot there.
Wow, that's quite the endeavor.
I leave on Tuesday.
So your background's in nutrition.
Yep.
So I guess the first question I have is, how are you going to do this? I mean, are you going to eat berries and bark the entire way, or are you going to? That's a lot of food to be dragging along.
Yeah. So my background is I'm a sports dietitian, board certified in sports nutrition. I've been a practicing dietitian for my entire military career, and have worked with Olympic athletes all the way down to to junior bike racers and everyone in between looking to get a performance edge on nutrition. I have not often like self perspective looked at what I'm eating and how am I going to perform. So that this experience has been a good one for me because I have the knowledge to figure this out. And a lot of folks have hiked this trail before me, and so here's the basic way it happens. You don't eat berries along the way. You'll never survive. You need to eat somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 calories a day, depending on how tough the day was, how long you hiked, what the weather is doing outside, all the factors that, essentially make for a really long day. A day of hiking can be as short as, a couple hours, or can be from sunrise to sunset. Could be 12, 13 hours of hiking. Could be like an Ironman every single day. And so, that caloric and protein demand is super important. And I can carry somewhere between 3 and 5 days of food on me. Any more than that, and my pack gets too heavy. So I have to resupply. I've been planning resupplying every 3 to 5 days. Fortunately, when the Appalachian Trail was designed back in the turn of the century, it was designed around the idea that it would travel, close to or through some trail towns, and so there are places to resupply about every 3 or 4 days, minus a few exceptions on the trail, almost the entire way. And so I've got a really neat spreadsheet that I didn't put together. I've borrowed from others who've gone before me, and I've highlighted the towns or places that I'm going to stop to resupply as best I can, and I've located the places that I'm going to get a resupply box from home. So what I can't buy or don't want to buy because I don't want to eat gas station food the entire way, I'll have family send me boxes to set locations with food in it to help fuel me for this monster endeavor over the next few months.
That is a monster endeavor. Good grief.
So this isn't the first stupid thing you've done.
No, I'm prone to stupid things.
So I know that you've already hiked a portion of the trail down in
Yep.
Mississippi, Georgia area.
Yep.
And you've Brian, you and I were talking about this earlier. Jim was one of the military members that was on one of the record holding teams to race across America with Ram. So, I mean, you've done some long distance stuff before. This isn't like the first go around. So for preparation, what have you done to get yourself ready for this type of endeavor?
So I had a lot of ideas in my head, but it sort of, I had an epiphany when I was doing one of my shakedown hikes. So a shakedown hike is sort of a practice hike. I put all my Appalachian Trail gear together, and I went out and hiked with some friends for a few days and practiced, setting up a neat, I have an ultralight tent that I hadn't used. So now I've used it for a week. And that was what a shakedown hike was meant to do. But it gave me a lot of time to think about being successful on the Appalachian Trail. And I think one of the things that might be a little unique for me is, in terms of what other people do, is I gave a lot of thought to what are the reasons that I could fail. And then methodically, I was going to go through each of those reasons and try to mitigate them in the months of preparation time that I had still ahead of me. And so I sort of grouped those, reasons for failure into failure to plan, failure to, anticipate, failure to, be able to know the weather and things. So those were easy things to fix. But if I did a little research on, why people say they failed hiking the Appalachian Trail, and a lot of it falls into injury. And, there's a certain, group of injury risks that I felt were mitigatable through training. So that's one, and I'll talk more about that in a second. The other was money. Fortunately, because, I've been prudent my entire life, financially, I'm prepared to take a little bit of time off right now. So I'm not going to fail because of money per se. I do have to get back to work eventually, so I can't be out there forever. I got family and other things obligations to come back to. But that's not going to be a failure point for me. And then the other one is a mental thing. People get bored on the trail. They miss home. They weren't prepared for weeks of freezing cold, rainy weather. It's miserable, and they're not. They didn't think they were going to be miserable. So the mental game. So I spent a lot of time working through the physical things that could go wrong with me, and then mitigating those, and the mental things that could go wrong and mitigating those.
Well, talk to us about physical. Let's talk about the gym. Because that
Okay,
is always a good topic.
yeah. So the most common reasons that from a physical standpoint that people fail, they get a stress fracture, they get a fracture. They have bad knees, they have bad back. They struggle to carry the weight. They're carrying too much excessive body weight. So there's a rule of thumb for hikers that you shouldn't carry a pack that's more than 20% of your body weight. The problem is if you're overweight, that makes for a ridiculously heavy pack. So I don't really like that rule. I feel like a summertime Appalachian Trail pack should be between 20 and 25 pounds, not more than that, and maybe lighter than that if you can get away with it. And a wintertime pack is going to be between 30 and 35 pounds. And so that's a lot of excess weight that you're carrying on your back. And that can cause injury, your knees, your ankles, your hips, how you carry the pack, your back. So I felt like the biggest physical challenge I'm going to have are my knees and my lower back. I have issues with hips, knees, and lower back, and so working with an expert in exercise science and you, Chuck, and some others, I put together a strength training plan that I was going to be able to do for almost 4 months up leading to the trail. And so everything from hitting the gym and doing a lot of squats, starting very slow and not worrying about looking cool with lots of weight, but keeping working on the form first before I got to to getting strong, was super empowering for me. I've been afraid of squats and deadlifts my entire life, and what that's led to is a bad lower back and poor posture. You can see me; I still shrunk down. That for me has been something that I'm working to overcome, and I think the gym has been a big part of that. The other one is, people will spend thousands of dollars to lower their pack weight. And I just had to look in the mirror. A couple months ago, I had a DEXA scan and I was sitting at, the highest weight when I got out of the military I'd ever been. I was sitting at 220 pounds. I was sitting at 26% body fat, 25% body fat. And I just, needed to look at myself and be like, Jim, you could lose 20 pounds of body fat. And that's an entire pack that your knees won't have to take, your lower back won't take. So I set out post-military to also really focus on my diet and aerobic exercise. And I'm happy to tell you now, Chuck, I just had my hike DEXA scan today, just before this meeting, and I hit my goal. I lost 20 pounds. I'm down to 200 pounds, 202 pounds to be exact. Body fat percentage of 20%. And although a little bit more muscle than fat than I would have liked to have lost, but we've talked about that. Like when you have to lose weight quickly, like you're going to lose a little more muscle than you want. But I'm super happy with the results, and I think those factors will help me be successful. I can't promise success, but I'm setting my body up for the best case possible by losing weight, by being strong in the gym, by being consistent in the gym. So yeah, I mean, and if I'm missing anything, please, you know what I've been doing these last few months. So
No, that was the big thing. So it was
Yeah.
getting you into the gym and actually moving heavy shit.
Learning to like squats and deadlifts.
Yes, I mean, and frankly, like not just squats and deadlifts, but one of the things that I've been doing, and I think this is maybe a little bit different. I don't know the specifics. So Chuck has talked to me a little bit about how he works out. Brian, I don't know specifically how you work out, but I've been very careful to work a lot of off-camber weight work. So, for example, doing suitcase carries and one-armed waiter carries and things where like I'm not symmetrical. So symmetrical, you got the bar on your shoulder, you're doing a squat. Not symmetrical is doing with one arm and a kettlebell and doing a squat, or a single-armed bench press. Now, I'm not saying that I'm relying on that. Those will be like my cleanup work at the end of the day. But it helps to strengthen my core and accessory muscles, so that one day when I'm picking up my pack and throwing it on, I don't pull a muscle while I'm out there on the trail. Frankly, my pack sitting at 34 pounds right now does not feel heavy. It feels very comfortable to slosh on there and move around with. I feel comfortable bending over or kneeling down when I've got the pack on. And those are things that I think a lot of folks struggle with because they didn't do the right prep physically. Now, that's not to say for if somebody watches this and they're like, I'm fat and lazy and I sleep and live on a couch and I want to go hike the AT, there are people that go from the couch to successfully hiking the Appalachian Trail. They just have to start out a little slower. They have to sort of walk their way into it. I'll be able to, because of the work, right off the bat, get into 15-mile days pretty quickly, I think.
That sounds like Phil Liggett saying they're riding in the form.
Yeah. Riding into form versus being ready for the race.
Sure. So with that approach, do you have a specific time frame you're looking? Do you have a target, a daily target, a weekly target, a finishing target, or you're just going to play it by ear a little bit and see what the trail brings you?
Yeah, so done a lot of reading on this. Everybody says to start off slow. So, and for reasons of both mental, physical, as well as just to get things in order. So my plan for the first week is to start off at about 10 to 15 miles a day, depending. We're hiking between shelters, and I'll talk a little about the logistics in a sec. But the first week or two will be 10 to 15 miles a day. I will finish the day early and feeling great. I'm going to feel like I should hike more, and I'm going to keep the brakes on. And then after about 2 weeks, I'm just going to hike from sunrise to sunset. And some days that'll be 15 miles, and some days that might be 18 to 20 or more. And I'm going to, kind of just listen to my body. Most folks recommend a 0 day, or they call it a Nero day, which is basically like every couple of weeks or a week or more, you basically take a day of rest, or a 0 day, or just a day of 3 miles or something like that. Just to make sure your body can recover. So I'll be listening to my body and taking breaks. But quickly, I want to get up into that 18 miles a day range, plus or minus, so that I can finish in under 120 days. That's sort of my goal, and that's very in line with what folks have done, like middle of the road to fast. There are people that will hike it from 120 to 170 days. That would be a little slow for me, and probably get me back later than I would like.
Okay. Well,
So what's your gear list look like? And then what's the one item that's almost like the most important piece of gear for you?
Golly. Yeah. So actually, there's a cool website called Lighter Pack, and I'm able to sort of put my gear, all of my gear that I'm taking on that website, and then I can send it out to other Appalachian Trail thru hikers and say, hey guys, shake down my pack and tell me what any advice you got. And so I've done that a few times. And just like the internet, sometimes it delivers and sometimes it doesn't. There's a lot of people that will, give you advice that just have never hiked before and they just don't know. And you got to wade through some of that. But I got a lot of great advice, and so I keep my list on Lighter Pack. I'll share that with you, Chuck, if you want to put it in the description or anything like that. But basically, it's real simple. So I'm gonna have to learn to live without. To keep things under 35 pounds, it looks like this. You got your bag, your pack, and then you've got a sleep system, which is basically your sleeping bag and your sleeping pad. And a pillow, your little air pillow. And the bag is really important. Your sleeping bag has to be rated to be warm enough for you to survive in the months that you're going to be hiking the trail. So I'm leaving in mid-February, so I need to be ready for winter. Got some winter experience, and so I have a 10-degree sleeping bag with a nice insert that goes inside that's going to add a little extra warmth for me. And then my tent. I have a Durston 2-person tent. It's an ultralight tent that uses my trekking poles. I love Durston gear. Big fan of it. Ultralight gear. Then I've got my clothes, of which I don't have a lot. I basically have a base layer, a mid layer, an outer layer, a rain gear layer. That's it. And so I will be wearing the same clothes pretty much for the entire hike. And people who hike the Appalachian Trail, they start to stink after about a week. My hope is I'll get to wash my clothes in hostels along the way. But
we've both done multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah,
Going with the same clothes every day for 6 months. I'm with you. I got it.
I'm not even bothered. I'm an athlete, so we get used to stink all the time, and sweat doesn't even bother me anymore. So I'm actually not too worried about that portion of it. What else do I have? I have my pack that I put my food in, because you have to hang your food. There are bears on the Appalachian Trail. It's rare that somebody has a bear encounter, but if I happen to have a bear encounter, I want it to go in my favor, which is the bears have no food to find when they're out looking in the evening, and so I will hang my pack, my bear pack, safely. I have let's see, I've got it behind me. What else do I got? I've got oh, you know what? I'm bringing some spikes because there's a good chance I'll hit some ice and snow in the higher elevations. And then, of course, just gloves and hat. And that's about it. It doesn't sound like a lot, does it?
What's your most important piece? I know what mine would be. I just want to see whether or not we agree.
Okay, so I got to tell you, after multiple shakedown hikes, I have a very expensive ultralight pad that goes under my sleeping bag. and the pad is great, and I sleep okay with it. But I read somewhere somebody had some advice to take an additional like foam pad. Some of the young kids will just like sleep on the foam pads, but I'm too old for that. But so I take a portion of that foam pad, and I put it under my sleeping bag pad, and now it stops sliding around the tent. The sleeping bag, the pad stays where it's supposed to be. My bag stays on the pad. Like, and also the styrofoam allows me, like when I want to do a lunch stop, I lay it out and I can sit on that styrofoam, get off the ground. That has become a sort of like my favorite piece of gear. I will tell you the other one is my Garmin InReach. It allows me to stay in touch with people. I pay a little extra with my Garmin so that I can text through it using the SAT system. So Chuck, we will be able to stay in touch via texting, no matter if I'm out of cell phone reception. And so maybe as a safety point, my Garmin, and then as just a personal preference, my second pad, which is almost a half a pound of extra gear that I probably don't need, but I'm going to start with it.
So Brian, now you see the difference between Army and Air Force. He's concerned about his bed. I'd be concerned about my boots, my feet. And Brian and I are going to do a podcast on this in the next day or so. And then he's talking about his gadget.
Yeah. To be honest, though, I've done a lot of prep hiking, and getting the right pair of shoes is a big deal for a thru hiker. Everyone who does a thru hike, their feet end up looking like hamburger meat. And so, I've been looking for the unicorn of shoes. My wife has gone nuts about, like, I keep ordering pairs of shoes. I look like Imelda Marcos with about 20 different pairs of hiking shoes in the house. And I'm trying to find the unicorn that, like, I can hike for a long time and they don't hurt my feet. I have not been able to find the unicorn shoe, but I have found one that is very comfortable and doesn't give me blisters. And so I'm using the Hoka Speedgoat 6s right now, which is not an uncommon shoe for a thru hiker. It is not a boot. It is not a waterproof shoe.
Right.
That is something I've read, that waterproof shoes are great until you're a thru hiker and your feet get wet, and your shoes never dry. And so you just got to go with a regular old, all trail sneaker and just suck it up. And so that's my plan.
Gotcha.
Will you have a second pair? Do you carry a second pair with you?
I won't carry one with me, but I have a couple extra pairs at the house. I expect to go through 2 or 3 pairs of shoes, especially the Hokas. Don't want to mock the Hokas. They make a great shoe, but I've read that they'll last for a month, maybe 2 at the most, before they start coming apart at the seams. So I'm prepared to have a shoe mailed to me about once a month.
That's pretty brutal test for the shoe, I would think. So
I don't even know where to go from here.
With the Garmin gadget-y thing. So I don't even know how that works, actually. But one of the things, I coach track cycling, so everything is short. The longest event in a track race is a Madison. So this was a weird thing, but I actually coached a guy that did Tour Divide, and I did one that did Paris-Brest Paris. So 2 completely different approaches, but really long, really mentally draining. Really, the guy that was doing the Tour Divide, his cracking point was simply not talking to anybody for weeks on end, right? How do you, is that one of the tools you're going to use, and how do you mitigate that part of it, that complete isolation at times where you're out in the middle of nowhere and don't see anybody for presumably days?
Yeah, that's a great question. Mental toughness. Let me also agree with you. It is really hard as a coach. I've been a nutrition coach for a long time. When somebody comes to you, with a normal event, like, hey, I want to go do a bike race for 1 hour. Man, I got 1,000 answers to get you perfect. But when they come at you with a weird event, like, hey, I want to go do race across America, and you're like, what? And you're like, yeah, I'm going to be riding for nonstop for 2 or 3 days, sleep for a couple hours. What do I eat for that? Or, hey, I want to go ride, Leadville in under 7 hours. Or even, in the last couple of years, coaching an Ironman athlete for a nutritionist has really been a journey and a challenge, because, what does an individual eat to ensure performance for an 8 to 12 hour race?
Sure.
There's a lot of arguments, that what we knew about nutrition 20 years ago, there's just, it's not what we thought in a lot of ways. Like running a 2-hour marathon. Those guys who run 2-hour marathons, take a few cups of water, in the course of 2 hours when they're running that marathon, and you're like, that doesn't match up with anything I tell my athletes,
Right.
for a 2-hour bike race. So how do I prepare for hiking all day long? Well, I keep telling myself from a mental standpoint, going back to basics, make sure you're hydrated, make sure you're well fed, because if you're hungry or you're thirsty, your body starts to break down. And when your body starts to break down, just like with any athlete, you start making bad decisions, you start getting in your head. And we've seen that with, even with a road race, a 4-hour road race, on a bike, it doesn't take much for you to start, if you're dehydrated and you're hungry, and then a break goes and you're like, I just don't feel like it. And that was the move, right? So I'm going to be cautious about making sure that I'm keeping good care of my body. Another one is blisters. You get a really bad blister on your foot, and man, you want to quit tomorrow, right? And so I'm going to stay on top of like my physical and mental physical and nutrition stuff, so that maybe helps with the mental piece. I'm also very prepared that I'm going to have bad days, and so I've made a couple commitments to myself. I will not quit on a bad day. So if I get to the point where I'm done, and it's raining, or I'm not going to quit. I'm gonna do one more day and then reassess. Right? Like I'm not going to quit this endeavor at my worst moment. I'm going to quit when I've got my wits about me and I've made a good decision, a conscious decision. I'm prepared for the loneliness. Everyone talks about that. I right now, I'm just ready to kind of get away from people for a little while. So I think I'm going to be okay with the loneliness per se, at least at first. I'm hoping I meet other people on the trail that I can hike with for parts of the day. And from what I've read, it may be lonely during the day, but when I get to my the huts and the lean-tos and the camping spots along the way, I'll surely see other people. And so I suspect that I won't be really that alone. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I have this Garmin InReach. Basically, it's a GPS device that's just a small little device about the size of your fist. It sits on your pack, and it can tell me my exact location at any time that I need it to. But what it also, and it's tracking. Like I've got a website now, a Garmin website that'll show my track along the trail, so family and friends can follow me. But it also allows me to keep in touch with family and friends. I can actually text from my phone through the Garmin using its satellite system. So when I don't have Wi-Fi or cell phone reception, I can still keep in touch with people through the Garmin. It's a neat device, and it's one that's got like an SOS feature. If something bad happens and I need, the worst of the worst, and I need help, I can get help that way. The last thing I've done, I actually I got this little book. In the book, I wrote down about 20 reasons why I've decided to hike the Appalachian Trail. So I've got about 20 reasons here that are very personal, and so when I have one of those bad moments, I'm like, what the hell am I doing out here? I'm going to pull this book out and I'm going to go through those and remind myself why I said I was doing it at the start. And I'll keep notes in there and see if things change over time. I also got some really good quotes and motivational things, musings in here that'll maybe keep me grounded for those bad days that will definitely come. But I think just being aware of them will be a big part of it.
Wow. Yeah, that's going to be a valuable few ounces carrying around for sure, I would think.
Yeah.
All right. So we're coming up on the end of part one of this, and it's going to be a multiple part thing. However, Jim, you and I have talked about being able to track you besides your Garmin throughout this, and the possibilities of some daily updates, and halfway or a third of the way through, halfway through, about having another discussion like this. Maybe I come down to the trail and meet up, and yeah. So how can people who are watching that want to kind of follow along with you?
Yeah, so right now I have a YouTube channel. I'm exploring the possibility of writing some things along the way using Substack. And then I'm also hoping that maybe we can make some time periodically when I'm taking those 0 days where we can get in touch and maybe do a little catch up and see how I'm doing. I'm going to be real frank about this. I'd like to go all the way to Katahdin, Maine, which is the end point. But I've also, I'm also going to listen to my body and be vocal about it along the way. There's one published study on a thru hiker doing the Pacific Crest Trail, and like I mentioned earlier, he got less healthy because of the crappy food he was eating and other things. By the end of the trail, his cardiovascular markers were less healthy than when he started with. My hope is that's not the case, but I'm also going to be monitoring my health along the way, assuming everything stays where it's supposed to be and improves. I'll be seeing you guys. We could celebrate in Maine, either VTC or Chuck, if you can make it up there sometime in June, hopefully.
All right. Well, we'll wait until we'll have another discussion on part 2.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you shortly.
Take care, guys.